Welcome to Library-ish, the podcast that shelves the serious stuff right next to the slightly silly. I'm January.
And I'm Tracy. Today we're opening up the well-worn pages of our childhood bookshelves to talk about the books that made us fall in love with reading.
Whether it was a classroom favorite, a dog-eared library checkout, ooh, don't do that, or the one series you just couldn't stop talking about at recess, these are the books that totally shaped our reading personalities.
We'll be diving into Scholastic Book Fair nostalgia and revisiting a few old favorites along the way to see how they hold up.
So grab your juice box, hop on that beanbag chair, squishy, squishy, and join us for Kidlit Rewind, books we loved as kids.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right, Kidlit.
Kidlit!
Yes. So did you have a reading personality when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, I did enjoy reading, but I did have a lot of grown-ups telling me what I should and should not read.
Oh,
And
that's not good.
it sucks. And honestly, that really affects whether I liked it or not. If I had a bunch of grown-ups telling me, you have to read this, this is what you have to read, my opposition defiance disorder is like, no. You read it.
Pathological demand avoidance.
The moment I'm told to read something, I'm like, well, I'm not reading that now, am I? So, but I loved Goosebumps. I was a big Goosebumps person. And, this is back in the 80s when I was really little. I really liked Eric Carle. The Hungry Caterpillar was the first book I ever read all by myself. I remember grabbing the book after I read it and running to my mommy and be like, Mommy, I read a whole book all by myself. It's a good feeling. It's all downhill from there.
No. Oh, dear God.
But yeah, I did. I liked the Goosebumps ones and I liked the silly ones and things like that. What was your reading personality?
Well, I hate to say it because it sounds so awful, but it was like it was a nonfiction, and until I found science fiction, which I did in 5th grade, I think. I had a set of encyclopedias at home, Golden Book encyclopedias.
Oh, those are fun.
And I was obsessed. Talk about obsessed.
Right.
I was absolutely like every day reading through them, going over and over them. I wanted my mother, like as soon as I could talk, I was like, please teach me cursive. And my mother was like, go away. And ironic that my handwriting would be so hideous. And I desperately wanted to learn how to handwrite, but it was...
you know what they say, the worse your handwriting is, the more likely you're going to be a doctor. Right?
Well, I mean, I think it's a prerequisite for most medical programs
Right?
Is that your handwriting is crap. At least it seems that way. But I would like take side notes and everything. So there were all these like crayon doodles and circles and whatnot of me pretending to write in cursive. And when I got to the school library, finally got into kindergarten, and they let us go into the library, the first 2 books I checked out were World Religions and Spiders.
Those two go together.
I've always been trying to figure it out. I guess, fish out of water kind of thing. I'm like, what are we doing here? What's happening? I need to figure it out. I don't understand.
That's adorable.
I need to figure it out.
Right.
But then finally, when I discovered science fiction and read R is for Rocket by Ray Bradbury, and particularly the short story A Sound of Thunder.
And that was that.
Yeah, that was the one that I was like, oh, I'm a reader. That, me sitting in class in tears over the end of that book, just being like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh. I have a theory that every single person, if you're not a reader, it's because you haven't had that groundbreaking book yet. Everybody has one. There's that one book that the moment you finish it, you're like, oh, that was delightful. I want another. And then you find yourself tumbling into this world of reading. For my sister, it was Holes. The book holds. It's a delightful book about a little boy.
I mean, that's considered a classic these days.
It is. It is.
Sure.
A little boy gets arrested for a crime that he didn't commit. He's sent to a prison camp where he and all the other little boys have to dig holes every day in this big desert. But it's not just that. It's kind of paired with a story that happened a long, long time ago, and the two kind of go back and forth and they intertwine. And it's a delightful read. But that was the book that she read, and she's like, oh, that's wonderful. I need to consume another. And and then you go into this you tumble into this world of reading.
No, it's true. It it unlocks that part of you that seeks alternative realities.
Right?
It really does.
The escapism of it.
There's a reasonable way to put that.
Right?
There you go.
There's this beautiful cartoon. I'm going to say beautiful because I love it. But it's of this little person, and she's running and she's running and she's running. And then you see behind her, there's this little ghost, and it's chasing and it's chasing. And the little ghost says reality. And it's chasing and it's chasing, and she's running and she's running. And then this beautiful book opens up, and she goes, and she jumps into the book, and the ghost goes, oh. Because she escaped from reality.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
Because a lot of times when you read, you're escaping reality. You're just kind of opening your mind to new worlds, to new stories, and it's a beautiful thing. So when someone comes to me and we talk and everything, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not a reader. I don't read for pleasure." My brain's like, "You just haven't met your book yet."
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's not
that's such a great idea. That's such a great way to put it,
right? Because that's what everyone has, that one. And if you're like, oh, I just don't read, it's not that you just don't read, it's not that you're not a reader, you just haven't met your soulmate book yet.
Yeah.
And once you meet that soulmate book, then your mind is just opened and you tumble into this world, and it's delightful. Join us.
Yes, exactly. Google gobble, one of us.
Google gobble.
Reference interviews and doing reference for patrons and everything. Of course, it's a really important skill that we have as librarians. But I'm always reluctant to recommend books because I feel that young'uns should be browsing the shelf for themselves. Young'uns. I feel like kids should have that. You were talking about people telling you what to read rather than you choosing. And I did not have those restrictions. At home, it was free reign. I could read literally whatever I wanted to read. And a lot of adult stuff was boring, so you don't read it. You don't look at it. You're like, I don't know what this is. I think it's so important to build that muscle for browsing. You have to determine your own taste.
Yeah.
And I think allowing a child or supporting a child's education when they're not making the decisions for themselves, when it is purely recommended reading, whether it's by a teacher or a librarian or any third party, a Lexile system that's saying this is the box you should be reading within.
Yeah.
I think all of that stunts growth when it comes to reading and inhibits people from finding that one key book that will turn them into a reader because they're not making the choice for themselves. They're not developing their own taste and their own discernment when it comes to choosing literature, which I think is one of the key things to being a lifelong reader, is knowing what you like. You can always go to that one genre. I know that if I need a little bit of fiction and I need a little bit of escapism, I can always find a science fiction author that I will enjoy.
Right.
Or a fantasy author that I will enjoy. And I can dive into that rather than just sit here and go, well, I don't know what to read. But that's a muscle you build by looking yourself.
Right.
No one can recommend you into that. You either know you like beach reads or you don't.
You have to explore it. The moment someone's like, read it, do it now, my brain's like, no, I don't want to. You do it. No. Even if it's something I know I'll enjoy. Even if it's something that I'm like, oh, I would really enjoy this. I have that, you would really enjoy this. But I got that bigger half of me being like, no, they're telling me what to do.
Heck no. I know. The neurospicy gets in the way sometimes.
just being told. Yes. Like, no.
Well, that's the other thing too about with kids, not putting too much pressure on them about what they read. If it's their own idea, they're more likely to follow through. If it's imposed upon them, if they have ODD or they have persistent or pathological demand avoidance. If that's
Mhm.
something that they're struggling with, you're just putting them right in the path of saying no to reading. You're just making it harder.
It is.
You're not helping them.
And it's a struggle.
You're putting up barriers. So
I remember I was homeschooled 4th and part of my 5th grade. We were traveling a lot, and my dad just thought it'd be easier to homeschool me. And the majority of states have in this, in our little Western hemisphere, their homeschool rules are relatively lax. It's not as strict as a couple of states over on the East Coast. So my dad chose to do this, and he noticed that I enjoyed reading Molly's stories in an American Girl series. There's she lives in like the 1940s, I think. It's around World War II-esque kind of things, and I enjoyed reading her. And he noticed that, and he saw that there was a ton of more books, and they're little thin books, they're nonfiction books. And he's like, okay, you're going to be reading one a day. And the moment he put the first book down and he said, you're going to be reading one a day, it didn't matter that I was enjoying it up to then. My brain's like, I don't want to do that. No, you read it. I was like, no, I don't want to anymore. He's like, but you've been reading one a day. And I'm like, yeah, now I don't wanna.
Yeah, when it was my idea, it was a great idea.
It was.
Now it's your idea of what I should be doing with my time. Much less attractive.
Not as fun. Now that I know you want me to do it as like an assignment, it's not good.
Yeah, the minute there are external expectations put on something, it's just no longer fun.
It is.
And it's just, it's one of the worst things you can do, I think. Especially with reading. Reading is very personal. Reading is something that you have to maintain that habit throughout your life. Eventually the kid's going to graduate out of school, regardless of the whatever level of education they achieve. And they're going to have to do it on their own. Or not. And if you want them to build that desire within themselves, they have to start young. You don't just wake up at 35 and go, I'm going to start reading. Oh, yes, now I have discovered that I enjoy that. No, you really got to build that muscle and start young.
It's really funny because like in high school, one of my teachers required the whole class to read To Kill a Mockingbird. And it was one of my dad's favorite books because I lived with him while I was in high school. And I'd be reading and he's like, where are you now? And I'd be like, well, I'm here. It was the part where Scout, they have, because the book's about Scout and her father, Atticus, and he's a lawyer, and it's in the racist South, and, some things happen. It's actually a pretty good book. But back when I was reading it in high school, it was a kind of a slog. The language is a little different.
They make young people read the book for various reasons. And there's a lot in that book. Just because there's a young person featured in the book doesn't mean it's necessarily a young person's book.
And it was a lot of concepts that, I understand in high school they're teaching that we're going over this, but it's the scene where she has one of her school friends come over for lunch, and they give each child a big plate of food, and he asks for some maple syrup. And they give him the maple syrup, and he just dunks it all over the vegetables, all over everything. He just covers it in maple syrup. And Scout, being Scout, says, what in the Sam Hill are you doing? And, I told my dad that, and he starts laughing. And he's like, I love Scout. And I'm like, I'm happy you're enjoying this. I'm just I'm not feeling it, at all.
Yeah.
Now, I reread it when I was an adult. And I loved it. I thought it was a delightful book. I thought Scout was absolutely endearing. I laughed at a lot of the parts where she's being Scout, Yeah. What do you mean I'm not reading right? I'm reading the same thing you guys are reading. There's a lot of fun to it now that I'm choosing to read it.
Right.
As opposed to being told you need to do this. Because I did read it for the assignment. I just didn't enjoy it.
Right.
I read it. I wrote my paper on it. I turned it in. I got my A, but I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. When I reread it, I did enjoy it. Yeah. And it's that little piece.
That's another thing about integrating classics into an educational curriculum is that Catcher in the Rye, these typical books, To Kill a Mockingbird, that they give to kids to read. I understand that even The Great Gatsby, I understand wanting the kids to experience reading classic literature. However, books. These are books, all of them were not written for high schoolers. They're written for adults.
Yeah.
And you're putting them in the hands of kids who really can't grasp and appreciate the full scope of this literature.
Right.
Excellent, highest quality literature that we have. And I think you're just turning kids into people that are like, I'm not a reader. You're just giving them the wrong impression of what reading is. I'm not saying what they should be reading is pablum. I think perhaps literature should be a little more relatable.
Yeah, that's fair.
That they're reading, and a little bit more so they can appreciate the themes and understand. You can still teach them comprehension, but it shouldn't have to be that you're giving them these boulders of intellect to dissect when they're like not even cooked yet.
No, that's fair. That's 100%
I think
fair.
it's just such a bizarre thing that we do in our school system, giving them these heavily themed, really deep tomes.
Yeah.
And then being like, now write a paper. And they're like, I just want to go to nutrition and eat a candy bar. And
I want to go to home ec and make my pizza and eat my pizza. And then that's it.
You know, it's just really weird. Like they can still learn to write about a story, and it doesn't have to be Mark Twain. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be Nathaniel Hawthorne that they're reading.
You know, I did love, speaking of classics, I did love Charles Dickens. We read Tale of Two Cities. And that one I read back then and I actually enjoyed. I've been debating on reading it again and seeing if it hits the same, you know? Because that was actually, while I was reading it, I was actually enjoying it. And it was one of those things where the school assigned, the teacher assigned it to me. And I never enjoyed those.
Well, he's a great example of his writing style, and everything is perfect for a high schooler.
Right.
I feel like it's accessible.
It is.
And the stories are accessible, and the themes are very basic. The villains and the good guys and everybody are very clear. The themes are clear. It's perfect for high schools. It was
delightful. It was great. It's actually in one of those books that I'm put aside so that I can reread it at some point in time to see if it kind of hits the same, but he was really good. I enjoyed him.
Yeah. I think there's something so out of touch with an educational system that forces kids into these absolutely outmoded ideas of how information should be assimilated and then how to apply it.
Yeah.
We don't even apply information in the same ways anymore. So teaching kids how to assimilate information using these techniques is just so outmoded.
It is. It's outdated. It's not accurate anymore.
No. But we had stuff. How about, did you ever have the Scholastic the book fair?
They still have those.
I know. They're huge still.
I know, because my kids come up to me and they're like, Mommy, the Scholastic Book Fair is there. Can we have money?
I mean, that's the follow-up to it all.
And I take out my wallet and I open it and little moths fly out. And I'm like, no, child, I have no money for your Scholastic Book Fair. I'm trying. There's nothing left there.
And you take your pockets and you turn them out and you go, I'm sorry.
And then those little monkeys still take me and dump me upside down to make sure there's nothing there. No,
one grabs one ankle, the other grabs another, and they just shake you out.
The third one checks the pockets just in case. But no, they still. I loved the Scholastic Book Fair. It was going through, and it was like, any one of these could be really good. Any one of these books could be really good. It'd be very exciting. And then now they have not just books, but they've got toys and they've got pencils and they've got all that stuff. And that was fun to go through and buy. And, get that dopamine rush of, buying something, retail therapy, right? At a young age.
Yep. We didn't have it. It eventually became like that. But when it started, it wasn't really a book fair. When it started, at the school I was at, they just handed out a form and you would put what book you wanted. You would look at the catalog. There was like a catalog and a form. And you would sort of mail order the books. You'd
I remember that.
And then they would deliver them. We didn't really have a book fair. But then eventually, like, the book fair did start. So it may have been like right around the time they were starting, because this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And you had to say you had money. If you couldn't just like go to the fair and browse.
Right. It's only if you could buy.
They would only let the kids go who could spend money. So I actually never got to attend a Scholastic Book Fair.
Oh, Tracy.
Yeah, because we were broke. So I never got to go. I always had to watch the kids leaving the room.
That sucks.
Yeah.
You know what though? Here at the library, we've got all those fun books that they have at the bookstore.
That's what the library is for. That's why, you don't ever have to be without books.
That is such a horrible feeling.
It was awful watching all right, who's got money? And everybody else is like, me. And I'm like,
okay, all you
like three other kids.
Rich children come this way. Tracy, you stay here.
Exactly.
With the unwanted.
Exactly. Y'all sit back and wait. It was, it was a lot, man.
Well, that's why you're very, very dedicated to the services you provide here.
Oh, 100%.
To make sure that no other child feels that way.
Well, that's 100%. I mean, well said. Thank you. Thank you for giving me credit I don't deserve. But do you remember what book you got at the book fair? Was there anyone?
Mine were always Goosebumps.
Oh,
I loved the Goosebumps, which FYI, we need more here.
I know. Putting them in the cart. I was working on that Saturday.
I loved the Goosebumps. It was just it was spooky, but it was cute at the same time. Like it made you like, you're reading it and it's exciting, but at the end, it was always like a ta-da, where it's just this little comfy, cozy ending where, nothing's really as scary as it was to begin with. I went from that one to R.L. Stein's Fear Street ones, which were his adult ones. And those had a couple of scenes that I'm still not over, like anytime someone reaches their hand down into the garbage disposal, my brain's like, done.
Nope. That'd be a no.
Nope. No, I know what's happening. I read this in one of R.L. Stein's books. I know what's happening to that poor handyman's hand.
No. Yeah, we don't like that.
But it was always the Goosebumps books. Those are always a comfy cozy for me. I loved them.
I love that. Yeah, mine was like Frances, who I think, because I only got the one book, and it was a Frances book, and I had it for years, and I don't know what happened to it. But Frances is like a raccoon, or she's like a little,
like a badger kind of thing.
Yeah, like a badger, and it was a Frances book, and I don't remember which one it was. Right. But that was the one that I ordered, and I had it for years and years and years. And it was very lovely, and then it disappeared.
Oh,
one day it was just gone.
Do you remember Dick and Jane books?
Yes, I had one. I think from when my sister was in school, which my sister's 13 years older, so it was a totally different time.
Right.
So yeah,
that's a whole
they
generation.
were weird, man.
They were. My grandmother read them to me a lot when I was little. Oh my gosh, I had to have been like 5, if that. And I remember her sitting with me and reading Dick and Jane books. And I remember the smell they had. They had that very specific smell, and the pages felt really wonky.
Yeah.
I remember those very clearly. Now I don't see them. I haven't seen one in a very, very, very long time. If anyone at home has a Dick and Jane book,
I bet those are expensive now.
Right,
like
now
the vintage ones.
The vintage, yeah. If you've got one, let us know in the comments or something. Let us know if you actually read it still.
I mean, I wonder if my sister got it from like school or something. It was a blue hardcover with a red banner across it, and just like that, like a trade paperback size, but a hardcover. And it had the illustrations in it, which were the thing that I was fascinated with. I was always like, look at those, the Mary Jane shoes and the white socks with it was like fascinating to me. Right. A whole different time.
I haven't seen one of those in forever. I mean, because we have our leveled readers now, which I suppose are similar to the Dick and Jane books. And we have a lot of those now, but I've not for a good minute have I seen any Dick and Jane books.
Yeah.
You need to.
I know. I don't even know if they're publishing.
And Nancy Drew's nostalgic. I actually did an escape room, a murder mystery. It wasn't an escape room, a murder mystery over in Chico for a teen night. And it was Nancy Drew themed. And I realized because I dressed like Nancy Drew and I had all the fun Nancy Drew stuff. And I love
when you do all that, when you go that extra
don't threaten
mile.
me with a good time. I will 100% dress up. We did holiday cottages here and in Chico last year for Christmas time. And I wore a big red dress and I had a white apron and I was Ms. Claus, and
I love it.
It's fun. It's fun to dress up. Anyway, but I was doing this murder mystery for Nancy Drew, and I had all the things and all the Nancy Drew, and I'm so ready for the kids to come in, and they came in, but they weren't it wasn't like, oh, Nancy Drew.
Right.
It wasn't like that. They just kind of came for the good time, which was great, and they had a good time. We had a lot of fun. But
the branding was lost on
the
them.
branding was completely lost on them. I'm like, it's Nancy Drew. And they're like, okay, old lady. Where's the pizza?
They're like, whoever that is.
We heard there was going to be free pizza. Where's the pizza? I'm like, oh, I'll get you the pizza. But the nostalgia was completely lost on them because they didn't have it. They weren't
that reference
there for
point.
it. Yeah. And that's when I realized I should probably do this with adults. Then there would be nostalgia.
Yes.
There'd be Nancy Drew nostalgia.
And you might not be the only one dressed up as
right?
Nancy Drew.
Exactly. I'm going to have to do that. Oh my gosh.
Hey, that's a great idea.
I don't do adult programming. Maybe I'll throw it at one of the programmers because we are going to have more adult programming here.
Oh yeah, for sure. Coming in the fall. We'll have
and that's going to be fun
all
stuff.
The branches will be.
Obviously book clubs. Book clubs are for grown-ups and, but it's more than that. We're going to have a lot more crafts, a lot more activities. Maybe we'll even have that murder mystery night where you can dress up like Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it was like Goosebooks. So was Goosebumps your ultimate favorite, or did you have like a book that was your favorite?
It was my comfort read. However, the book like I told you, everybody has that one book. Because Goosebumps I read, they were fun. It was nice, but it wasn't like it didn't crack my perception into reading. It wasn't the thing. The one that got me, that I finished it and I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm still hungry, I need more, was oddly enough Pride and Prejudice. Oh, wow. I read Pride and Prejudice in high school of my own volition. The teacher's like, you're going to do a book report, pick whatever book you want.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And she's
That's
like,
how to do it.
Any book you want and whatsoever. And I had been looking at that because my aunt was like, oh, it's such a classic. But I hadn't touched it because my aunt said, oh, it's such a classic.
And you were like, ugh.
So I picked that up and I started it. And the language was a little hard at first. But then I kind of just found a flow. Yeah. And I went through it and I hated Mr. Collins like we all do, and just and I loved Elizabeth. And then I got to, spoiler alert, I guess. It's like,
it's your own dang fault.
I know. This book is hundreds of years old. Come on. But I got to the part where Mr. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth the first time. And I'm like, oh, good. Wait, I have more than half the book left. Oh no. And then I knew what was going to happen. And then I read it. I'm like, ah! And I had to do that thing where I'm like, I need a break. And then, I go back to it. And I finished it and I had such a fun time with it that was the book that just kind of opened me. And I'm like, this was a lot of fun. This can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For me, it was really that. It was Ray Bradbury.
Yeah.
That Sound of Thunder story. I was like, I did not know that. And that's essentially a kid's book, Art is for Rocket. It's a compilation of short stories. I did not know there could be so much depth and subtext in a story. And because although a lot of what he's saying is explicit about the scope of the story. And essentially, if you've never read A Sound of Thunder, it's about a future where time travel is ubiquitous. There are companies that do time travel. And this one particular company that has sort of cornered the market does hunting excursions so people can go and shoot dinosaurs.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah. But they do a whole thing. They find the dinosaur that's going to die. And so the dinosaurs, the animals are earmarked. So when you go back, you're not really changing the past. What you're doing is you're keeping the flow of time the same. And people walk on hoverboards, so they're not disturbing the ground. There's this whole thing. And a tour guide, this one guy goes on the tour and he's just a horrible person that wants to do whatever he wants to do and thinks because he has money, he has a right to not follow the rules. And and mayhem ensues.
As it does. Yes. Often does.
Yes. And I just, even though it was a short story, the scope of the story, the trajectory, the amount of information that was packed into the story was so profound. It affected me so profoundly that I was like, I have to, this speculative fiction, this is where it's at. This is what I'm all, and so I read everything Ray Bradbury wrote and then went on to other sci-fi from there because I was just like, this is where it's at,
this is
baby.
me. This is my book.
This is where it's at, because it was, I guess, that balance for me of nonfiction, of fact and science and things like that with speculation and fiction and imagination. And so I was just like hooked. I was completely hooked and just read it all, man. Read it all. Went from that to Philip Jose Farmer and Andre Norton and Clifford Simak and Mercedes Lackey and everybody. I was reading everybody. So
that's delightful.
Yeah. So that was how I got into reading. Like really reading for just unable to stop. That addictive, where you get into that addictive period where you finish a book and you must have one backing it right up.
Oh my gosh, I know that feeling. I had in high school, I remember, because my parents got divorced when I was in 6th grade. My dad moved down to Fresno and my mom stayed up here. And for a while I was doing the fun divorced parent dance where you kind of go between each house. And then I moved in with my dad for the school year and I would come and stay the summer with my mom. And I remember we had a long time ago, I'm not going to tell you how long, we had this adorable little used bookstore up in Paradise, over by, it's now True Value. It used to be a Holiday. And back then, I don't even remember what it was. Anyway, but it's this cute, it was called Nancy's Books. And I would go in there and I would get, the little, because back then I had eyes that could see. And it was amazing.
I remember those days.
Right? Having eyes that could read the teeny tiny print. Now I'm like, oh.
I can't even read my own driver's license.
Right. I need to break out my readers. I have little old lady readers in my purse. And I feel so bad where I can't read something. I'm like, oh, I have to take out my readers. Hold still, Sonny. Let me get you in just a second. Okay. It's so embarrassing now. But back then I had young eyes and I could read. And I would get these little mass market paperbacks and they were so naughty. It was all romances and it was Harlequin romances and it was very naughty romances, a lot of Western romances, but I would get like 3 at a time, so you don't want to run out. You never want to run out. And, no. And what I would do is I would go down there and I would grab them and then I'd go back up to, the house and I'd clean a little bit, I'd tidy, I'd make my little nest. And then I would sit there with my book and I would devour a book a day, because they're fast reads, they're romances. And back in high school, I mean, now you can read a romance book, it's like, meh, but back in high school, this was naughty. And there's
a lot of spicy
right?
Stuff.
They're super spicy. And it was super naughty as a high school student to read these super naughty books and be like, my parents don't know what I'm reading. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I had this mortifying moment one time when I went down there, because this is a small town. And I went down to Nancy's Books and I was trading in the old ones and getting new ones. And she's like, January, huh? And I said, yeah. She's like, I think my grandson knows you. I'm like, does he now? She's like, yeah, I'll tell him that you came in and let me check out this smut for you. And I'm just like, this is great. I'm so happy I live in such a small town. And I did know her grandson. It was very awkward. I'm like, please don't tell your grandson what I'm reading. That'd be great if it didn't get around to my folks.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great. Thanks much.
Thanks much.
Yay. Well, that kind of is a good segue into what are some of the things that we read that haven't aged so well. I'll tell you, it makes me think, because you bring up the romance, and it makes me think of one of the things I read as a kid. V.C. Andrews, Flowers in the Attic.
Yeah, that's controversial is a nice word.
Yeah, controversial for sure. That's one of those books that you look at and you think to yourself, so this was, especially back in the day when I was a kid, like every kid hit high school. I think it was like you hit 14 and you Flowers in the Attic. That was what you were reading. It is bizarre to me that people were giving that book to like younger than high school kids. I'm not going to go over the themes that are in that Flowers in the Attic and
They're
that entire city
yeah.
is that entire series. They are it's very much a trigger warning situation, which I think is part of the reason why the series hasn't really aged all that well. There was a whole genre in the 1970s of fiction or memoir too. I was talking about books like Go Ask Alice, things like that, where it was sort of touching on very controversial areas that today you would really want to give somebody a trigger warning before even discussing these particular areas. They're very intimate and very uncomfortable areas of fiction to be reading. And that's not just for young people, but for any age. And I think there's one of the great things about today is people are a little bit more conscientious about what they're writing and how it can affect the reader. And I think that sensitivity about how a topic should be dealt with that maybe is either controversial or tragic or emotional, we do so much better with that these days. There was a period of time where people were really exploiting other people's trauma for money in publishing and film and whatever. And really, we don't really exploit people's trauma like that anymore. And I think, those books really haven't aged all that well simply because of that. I also had someone tell me not too long ago that they were reading old Babysitters Club books and were sort of experiencing the same thing, that they were like, wow, the behaviors and the interactions between the characters are real. It's really not great.
No.
And Babysitter's Club, I was already an adult when those books came out, but I can, being sensitive to people's trauma is so important, and I'm so glad we honor that more now. And
we do
publishing and
I
things
remember
like
back
that.
in the 90s and stuff like that, trigger warnings weren't even a thing.
Oh God, no.
No, you read that book,
Yeah.
And it is
and often because it was salacious, because it had those details in it, that was considered the draw. That it totally exploitive. And so I really think, some things haven't aged well simply because we've grown. As our empathy has grown, and I think that's such a good thing.
That's delightful. Another thing, the publishers for Dr. Seuss.
The estate.
They pulled a couple of books that had just, for lack of a better term, had aged poorly. They had some stuff in there that's just not appropriate anymore.
Very much delving into stereotypes and things like that.
Very much.
We don't need that.
I remember, what was it? It was
unnecessary.
What I saw on Mulberry Street. That was one that, I read, and I read to my kids and everything. And then, when you take a look at it with fresh eyes, you're just like, oh, that's inappropriate, you know?
Yeah, that was really so great of the Seuss estate to acknowledge those issues with those books and to discontinue publishing them. I think it was what a wonderful thing for them to do, to acknowledge how paradigms have shifted, how society has grown, and how literature like that doesn't necessarily have a positive impact like it should. Especially because Dr. Seuss, in so many ways, so much of what he wrote has such a positive impact. One of my favorite books as a little, you think about the Lorax, about the environment. You think about
Lorax.
So many of his books were so conscious of higher things, of doing good. Another one that was my favorite was The Sneetches. Which is such a great take on trying to keep up with the Joneses. You got your Starbelly Sneetches, and you got your Sneetches without, and everybody's looking down on everybody else, and everybody's trying to be everybody else. And then there's just this guy taking everybody's money, exploiting everybody. It's such a good story. It was one of my favorites when I was little. And I like that. He had written so many other stories that had such a positive impact, that for the estate to pull those, I think, was such a great move.
Yeah.
For his legacy.
It's a conscious move.
Yeah.
It's showing that we understand that times are changing. We understand, and we need to change with them.
Yeah.
We all need to mature.
Absolutely.
That's why people are like, gosh, we as a species are supposed to adapt. We're supposed to change. We're supposed to mature. We're supposed to grow.
100%.
And people get lost in, oh, I wish things were like they used to be. We need to, make things like they used to be. People are too sensitive now. We need to just go back how we were. You're supposed to grow.
Right.
You're supposed to mature.
Right.
You are supposed to change.
Right.
Stop fighting it.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if every grown-up just acted like a 3-year-old? Because why change?
There's
why
a reason I work with children.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, you can imagine if every time something happened that they didn't understand or didn't appreciate, or they just throw a tantrum. As if that doesn't happen.
I was going to say, I'm like,
but like that's the point of growing up. I think as a culture, we have grown so much, and I think it's important. I think.
Well, and that's why, when you grow and then you go back and you read these books that you fell in love with as kids, sometimes they don't hit right. They don't hit the same. And you're just like, wait, I loved this book as a kid. Why is it not hitting now? Because you've grown, you've changed, you've matured. Twilight. I loved Twilight.
There you go.
I loved it so much. I go back now and I try to read it, and I can't get very far in before I'm like, what was it about this that I loved? I mean, I loved it back then. I was all about it. I was all Team Jacob. I was 100%. I was not Team Edward. I did not. I would rather have the werewolf over the vampire. Fight me. I
mean, it's fair.
I'm that person with the desk with the big sign over it that says,
yes,
I will take the werewolf over the vampire any day.
Yeah. Fight me.
And it's but now I go back and I try to read it, and it's hard to get through now, because I've changed. I've matured. My reading tastes have changed.
Because I mean, let's be fair, sometimes as adults we still read kid books.
Oh my gosh, so much. Do you know how many YA books I devour? I love YA. Absolutely. And I'll read kid books. What was it? I was reading this one. Oh my gosh. The Witchlings with my daughter. That's one of our J books. And it's so much fun. And we went through that together. And then afterwards, everything was a butt toad. You're being such a butt toad today. And it was just, because that's an insult that they used in there. And it's so cute. There's lots of really good things that are out now,
That's it for today's episode of Library-ish. We hope our Kidlit flashback sparked some of your own childhood reading memories.
And if you had a book you were absolutely obsessed with as a kid, we want to hear about it. Message us, tag us, or email us. We might feature it in a future episode.
Until next time, keep your library cards active.
And your inner child reading.
Bye.
Bye.